There's also the war Archie goes to, where he's literally doing trench warfare in the year of our Lord 2020. What war are you fighting, babes? I want specifics. Were you doing colloidal? It feels like you were maybe doing oil interests. Were you doing oil interest sourcing? Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing the final Riverdale installation. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. There's just an old man in my backyard. Like, what's the plan? Why are you there? This might be the last video I ever make. It's like, is it The Strangers, the one with the horror movie with the people with the masks? I'm about to get strangered. Anyways, I've been unpacking, I literally think, for the entirety of 2024, and now he's leaving. So, okay, I'm focusing. I have been unpacking, recapping Riverdale for the entirety of 2024. I think I started in January this year, which is crazy because we're in August right now, like the last week. That's nuts. That's crazy to me. And this is kind of the amalgamation of that journey. This is not like a part 4 because I've done 3 videos prior. This is an overview, an autopsy, the only video about Riverdale you ever need to watch. I want this video to be unearthed by historians in the future when they have questions about the kinds of media we consumed in the 2020s, because I really think listen, I've written a script. It's 8,000 words. I want to make a long overarching video about the themes of Riverdale, what's happened in it, what I think about it, what the experience of watching Riverdale is. My earlier videos in this series were very akin and heavily inspired by Mike's videos about Pretty Little Liars and recapping other television shows mainly. He was inspired by Jenny Nicholson because she made a video about the Vampire Diaries. This video is definitely much more inspired by that video. I got struck down by illness a couple of weeks ago and just truly watched 17 5-hour-long YouTube videos. Like, that's what I did with my time, and it was a wonderful use of my time. So this is going to, instead of just recapping Riverdale, we're going to be diving deep into every single aspect of it and my thoughts on those things. First of all, this is my Jughead crown. I thought I'd put this outfit together today, and in my brain, I was like, it's fashion girly. I look like a fashion girly. And now that I see it on camera, it is definitely much more child at a birthday party than I had previously considered, but that's okay. That's fine. I'm fine with that. You gotta crack a couple of eggs to make an omelet. So here we are. And also I want to say I love this show. I love this show more than I love being alive. I've seen obviously every single episode of Riverdale. I have to in order to make this video. Will I be making fun of it? Yes, but I make fun of the things I love. That's how I relate to people. I'm so irony poisoned that I can't just like express unadulterated, genuine affection for things. I have to like make fun of them. And I do think that this show, we'll get into it, is the last of its kind, will be remembered fondly in years to come. Obviously, it's fun to make fun of Riverdale because it's insane, but that's why I love it. I genuinely think this show is good, okay? Before we get into the rest of the video, I just wanted to take a quick break and talk about this video's sponsor, Typology. Typology is a French skincare brand created in Paris. They are vegan and cruelty-free, and everything is made in France. They investigate the right actives for your skin, and based on that, they formulate targeted products using only essential ingredients. And these minimalist formulas are made with 80% ingredients of natural origin. Typology has a diagnostics test, so you can just take the test, talk about your skin, your areas of concern, your environment, all those different things, and then they will give you a personalized skincare routine. I took the test and got my products, and I was surprised at how quick it was. Like, genuinely, sometimes you take like a diagnostic test, and it is truly 20 minutes of your one brief life on God's green earth. The test takes like 4 minutes. Like, it's really, really, really quick. And of course, all of this has been validated by dermatologists. Also, instead of like the industry standard of 3 types of skin, oily, dry, or combination, the test places you in one of the 24 typologies of skin. So when I took the test, my skin typology is AE, but a lot of my concerns basically are my environment. I live in a city where there's lots of air pollution, but the air is also incredibly dry in the winter, but my face is pretty oily and I break out a lot because of my period. I have the periodic serums, and these basically address different concerns during my menstrual cycle. So there's a hydrating and soothing serum. So for this one, you use it on the first week of your cycle and you apply like 3 or 4 drops in the morning. A glow and bounce serum. This one you use on the second week of your cycle and you apply a couple of drops in the evening. A hydrating and astringent serum. This one you use on the third week of your cycle and you apply 3 to 4 drops in the morning. And a mattifying and anti-blemish serum. And this one you use on the 4th week of your cycle and you apply 3 to 4 drops every morning. Again, as I said before, I also am prone to acne, and they gave me a targeted blemish serum. This is L61. It has salicylic acid 2% and zinc 1%, and you just put it on. And also, I know you're all jealous, but I have eczema. I know. And the C93 itch relief cream addresses that. I've been trying not to use creams with an overwhelming amount of steroids because that's not very good for you, especially if you break out on your face. And this genuinely is so soothing and helps it not itch. This is going to be like my lifeline in the winter when it gets really, really bad. So if you want to find out your skin typology and start addressing your skincare needs, go to the link in my description below and check out Typology's skin diagnostics test. And if you use this link within the next week, so like the week from when this video is posted, you can receive a free bottle of organic orange blossom hydrolate with a purchase of $40 or more. I love free stuff, so you should do that. Again, thank you so much for Typology for sponsoring this video and for helping me get my skin in check. Let's get back to it. So chapter 1, the teen drama. I want to do a little overview of how Riverdale was made and what I think it represents, because I think in the culture, it's really like the last of its kind. So I started watching Riverdale in the pandemic. I had seen the first season when it came out in 2017 because it like came out on Netflix, and I liked it. I love a murder mystery like more than life itself. I will consume any and all content if it has like a whimsical little mystery, small town mystery in it. Like that is my shit. I watched it, fell off, I think, when everyone fell off, when in the second season they let us know who they really were. Nuts. Unhinged. In the pandemic, I don't know if you remember it or heard of it, but there was a coronavirus pandemic that happened in 2020. I moved back home with my parents, and me and my sister were looking for something to watch, and we started watching Riverdale. So we watched it basically entirely all the way through until I finished this like 3 or 4 months ago or something. No, it must have been later, like last September, I guess. It's lobotomy television. There's no other way to describe it. And I say that with love and light. We wanted something we could watch that was not serious. And the show is so unserious in the most beautiful way, and something that you can like go on your phone during. And I think that's really the beauty of a show that has 22 episodes a season. Look, we've all watched, you know, A Pretty Little Liars, A Gossip Girl, a show that has 20 episodes a season, kind of a thing of the past. But we don't really get that anymore. Like shows get like 10 episodes a season. I think this is good for plot because if you're doing cohesive mystery plots or cohesive romances, there's really no wasted time. But I think the downside of this is that you actually have to pay attention. You can zone out during a 20 episode season of a show and still like get it. You can miss one and come back. You know, that's why they had like previously on Pretty Little Liars, previously on Riverdale. So you don't forget. And actually, Riverdale doesn't have one, but they should, because there's so much shit that comes back and you're like, babe, bold of you to assume I remembered that. So the show premiered January of 2017 and it ended August of 2023. All of those seasons have around 20 episodes, if not more, per season. The show is on the CW and then premieres on Netflix afterwards. So it really is like the last of its kind in terms of like a teen drama that's on air that has that many episodes. And what comes of that is the level of chaos that we're not really seeing from our other shows that we should be. So there are 7 seasons of this show and over 137 episodes. There's a really, really good article if you want to learn about the Riverdale lore. It's done by Vulture. I will link it in the description. I say I'll do this every time and then I don't. And it's basically an interview with the cast, but looking back on the final season of Riverdale as they're filming it. And something that stuck with me in such a real way, a show hitting 100 episodes is a thing of the past really now. Like, especially if you're doing 10 episode seasons, you have to do 10 seasons of a show to get there, which doesn't really seem reasonable in the same way. And also, because they were continuously shooting, because there's so much content that needs to be shot, they would be shooting things out of order and out of context. So they wouldn't even know like what the scene they're shooting means in the context of the episode or the season. There's a specific example that Camila Mendes, who plays Veronica on the show, brings up, where she has to sing "Here's to the Ladies Who Lunch." And she's like, I didn't know if I was happy when I was singing that or sad or why my character was singing that, because they just knew that they were going to put it in the episode, but they hadn't figured out why yet. So teen drama, a massive like long running network television show like this, it's like a dinosaur, like it's like a fossil. It's like the last of its kind in a really crazy kind of way. So what is Riverdale about? Basically, okay, it's a mindset. It's a lifestyle. It captures ennui, denouement, auteur. All of those words come to mind when thinking of Riverdale. At its heart, at least in its original conception, it is about a small town called Riverdale that is like this perfect, wholesome, all-American town with a dark underbelly. And the show is like all these dark and horrific things happen in this perfect, nostalgic, American small town. It's based off of the Archie comics, something I think we all know, but seems wild to say. The Archie comics are about Archie, an all-American teenager, and his all-American friends as they like drink milkshakes and drive around in cars and like go to sock hop. It's been running since 1942, which I didn't know. The comics like have a 50s vibe. I knew they'd been going on for a long time, but I didn't know that they were like World War II. You know what what? It's a teen drama. It plays with the conventions of that, undermines them a bit, but like there's love triangles, romance, and a teen drama thriller kind of thing where like somebody is murdered, but they're like, who am I gonna take to the prom? How am I gonna tell my dad that I want to play guitar and not just play basketball? That kind of thing, okay? Every single season, there's like a mystery or like a big bad guy, and the teens of the town need to solve it in order to save the town. And also usually then there's like mixed in with teenager stuff, being like, I want to go to college. My high school gym teacher runs a cult where they worship babies. That didn't happen, but it should have. Riverdale, get me on the writing team. I'm just saying, I know the show is over, but whatever. The last thing I want to say to help you understand the vibe of Riverdale is that it's tonally incredibly strange. For the longest time watching the show, I was like, oh, it takes place like in this, like it doesn't take place in time, if that makes sense. Everybody goes to the diner and there's sock hops and people are obsessed with drinking like malt milkshakes, and nobody dresses really like it's modern times, but they don't necessarily dressing like in poodle skirts of the 50s. Like it's quite confusing. The show does canonically take place, like starts in 2017 and each season coincides with the year it came out, basically. We'll get to the timeline in a second because it's whack. So the show is taking place in the modern day. It's just got this strange kind of like aesthetic and vibe. It's kind of like modern noir where like all the shots are kind of dark and there's lots of like smoke and neon signs, but it's also the 50s. So it's like characters aren't texting on iPhones. They're like picking up like a cord phone. They're putting on like record players. Like they're not using necessarily computers, and if they are, they're like 90s big computers. They're using like typewriters and stuff like that. This is just like a choice. And I guess it's also kind of to pay homage to the comics, which are basically perennially trapped in the 50s. I like this. Roberto Aguirre Sacasio, who is the creator of Riverdale, he also runs the Pretty Little Liars reboot. With all of his shows, they kind of exist in this like, not even timeless, but it's like outside of time, 1950s vibe. I don't super love it in shows that have already been established to be in the modern day. I think it's confusing, but I think in the case of specifically the show Riverdale, it's awesome. My number one favorite thing about Riverdale, say what you will about her, you cannot accuse Riverdale of not taking massive swings. Like they are ambitious in the scope of what they do. They could have made this show look like They could have just done like, okay, we're going to make it look like Secret Life of the American Teenager. We're going to make it look like any ABC family teen drama. And they went, absolutely not. Everybody's going to be screaming into their malt milkshakes while somebody using a bazooka is mowing down all of the candy stripers and diner like waitresses on roller skates. That's what this show is. And I think that is actually really cool. The final thing I want to talk about in this section is the creation of Riverdale, because it's literally, I was going to say psychotic, but I don't even think that's fair to people who experience psychosis. Like, that's just not right. The show was created, as I just said before, by Roberto Aguirre Sacasio. Now, he is a playwright, a television writer. He wrote for the comics of Archie. He wrote for like Marvel comics too. He's basically an Archie super fan that's also a writer, okay? He created the show. He's been like the creator of the show the entire time, producer, overseeing all of the narrative choices on the show. So if you have beef with the show, take it up with Roberto, okay? Because he is the one that is, you know, stewarding our brave ship as it goes, bravely into the night. So while studying his life story, I found out that he studied at the Yale School of Drama, which no, you know, offense to any other drama schools, is a real ass fucking school. If you look up their alumni list, it's like famous theater actors, best actors of our time. Jeremy O'Harris went there. Lupita Nyong'o went there. The list of famous playwrights. Brandon Jacob Jenkins, who I've been reading all of his work this year, also went. Like, the alumni list is nuts. And further bolstered by the creator of Riverdale also attending the Yale School of Drama. So I bring this up just because I think sometimes, and there are moments of writing on Riverdale that are rough. I'm not arguing that. I'm not going to defend every single moment of the writing on Riverdale, but I do think him going to the Yale School of Drama to shine a light on the situation, that a lot of it is intentional. So while he was in school, he wrote a play called Archie's Weird Fantasy. So it was an unofficial, like, Archie play in which Archie comes out as gay and moves to New York City. Obsessed, no notes there. Say what you will about Roberto, he let us know who he was right from the start. Authentically himself. Obviously, when Archie Comics got word of this gay fanfic play that's unofficial being produced at the Yale School of Drama, they were like, oh no, why? No, obviously you can't. So he renamed it Weird Comic Book Fantasy and just put it up as normal, which I'm all for. Steal IP, girl. Time is an illusion. It's man-made. We don't own anything. We've created borders. Like, imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. You know, like, just do what you want. Steal that IP. And it was produced at Dad's Garage, which is an improv theater in Atlanta, Georgia. I know your brain hasn't been rotted by niche knowledge of improv theaters across North America and Europe, but mine has. And when I was reading a page about Archie's Weird Gay Fantasy, it's not gay, I added gay, that's fun. When I was reading an article about Archie's Weird Gay Fantasy, they said it was produced by the theater group Dad's Garage in Georgia, and I went, that's an improv theater, babe. Not necessarily a theater group, it's an improv theater. So I just want you to know that. After he graduated from the Yale School of Drama, Roberto wrote for Marvel Comics after graduating. He wrote for the Fantastic Four there. I didn't know, like, I knew people still wrote comics. I know that they still exist. I've got friends deep in the comic book world in a way that I'll never really be able to understand, but I support them nonetheless. But it never occurred to me that, like, it was new young people writing comics, even though that makes sense. I just pictured like an old man with like a cigar, I guess, asking for pictures of Spider-Man. I don't know. So he wrote for Marvel Comics. He then wanted to write for television. So where did he go? Glee. We're not going to talk about an absolutely wild TV show and not somehow figure out how Glee gets into the narrative, okay? Glee is in the narrative. Don't worry about it. So he wrote for Glee. He directed a bunch of episodes as well. He got hired after the first season for the third season. And I say this because as a Glee historian, somebody who's obsessed with Glee, third season is whack. It's wild. The first two seasons, I think, are basically airtight and good. And again, walk that line if people are like, Glee is so crazy. And you're like, right, but it's like a comedy show, like it's a joke. Like when Sue Sylvester throws a child down the steps, that isn't the show being like, this is normal behavior. That's the show being like, isn't that wild and kind of funny to imagine an adult throwing a child down the steps? So he joined during the third season. He directed a bunch of episodes while he was there as well. I feel like a notable episode that he directed was the Grease episode. Glee does Grease. Glees. I just needed you to know that. After he was hired to write for Glee, he was also hired to write the comic book Archie Meets Glee, which I guess is an Archie Glee comic book crossover. I didn't know that this existed. Why must we play God? This is my Frankenstein's monster. I don't think we need to be doing science in this way. And writing for Archie Meets Glee is science. After that, he was basically hired full-time by Archie Comics, and however full-time that can be. So he wrote for Archie Meets Glee. He also wrote Afterlife with Archie, in which Riverdale is overrun by zombies. I bring this up because while Archie Meets Glee is an abomination to literature, and some might say the modern version of the myth of Icarus, in that we are flying too close to the sun, and for what? Have we learned nothing from the Titanic? Feels like we haven't, because Archie Meets Glee is my personal Titanic. And I love the Titanic. He wrote Afterlife with Archie, and again, I bring this up because this comic is much darker than the work he'd been doing before. He wasn't the first person to do dark Archie comics. There's a couple of other ones that are much more adult iterations that deal with different kinds of sexuality and much darker themes than when you think of Jughead wanting to house a burger in the original Archie comics. And that's his arc, that he wants to just absolutely house a hamburger with the vigor of a hound, you know? So Afterlife with Archie, while not only dealing with death and literal zombies, had incest themes. We'll get there. There's one thing that Riverdale's obsessed with, it's incest, and strange sexual themes. So all that is to say that he's kind of honing his vision for Riverdale. He then became Archie Comics' chief creative director. So he's the head Archie in charge, some might say. And in 2013, they began shopping an Archie movie. At one point, Louis C.K. was slotted to play Archie. It's like every single detail I learn about this man's career tests me. It's a test to see how strong I can be for you. But then they decided to make it a TV show and did it with the CW. A pilot in 2016 was ordered, okay? Did well, tested well. The show premiered 2017. Pretty quick turnaround, but the first season, which we'll get to, is tight as fuck. It's a tight season. I think it's very good. He's, of course, the showrunner, the creator of Riverdale. I think that his origin story, which in many ways is my Joker origin story, highlights how this is a man whose entire adult life and most of his creative endeavors have been basically putting Archie characters in up positions or writing for Glee. Like, what did we expect? Now let's get into what the show is about. So let me tell you about the main characters. First, we have Archie. He's the head bitch in charge. He's the main character. He's basically like a classic all-American kid. He's a jock. He's happy-go-lucky. He doesn't like struggle, if that makes sense. Later on in the show, they make him struggle. You meet people in adult life who are just like, yeah, high school kind of was great for me. And you're like, what? Sorry. What? That's Archie, okay? He's kind of dumb, himbo energy, good vibes. Like in the first season, Jughead is in the trenches. Jughead is homeless, and Archie's like, I want to write music. So that's just kind of giving you the idea of the kind of person that he is. One thing about Archie before we move on, he's dumb. He's dumb. The character canonically dumb. If there is a bad choice to make, Archie will make it. Also, basically, they make him invincible. Like, you could like run a 14-wheeler at Archie and he'd be fine. His bones are made of steel, apparently. Next, we have Betty. Betty, at the beginning of the show, kind of the conception of her character is that she's the girl next door with a dark secret. In the pilot, they like allude to her having a drug problem, which they literally just drop and are not interested in touching anymore. She has the fucking serial killer gene, which is something that will literally haunt me till the end of my days, where she has a gene that serial killers have. You know how sometimes like cancer is genetic? Serial killerism is as well. So she's fighting against the darkness in her soul. She's very smart. She's very kind and loyal. She's very justice driven. She's incredibly mentally ill. Like, Betty is a great character on the show because she solves mysteries. She like wants to write for the school paper and like uncover injustice. Her parents are nuts. So she wants to like create real journalism that they might be hiding or covering up for, because they're also like the newscasters of Riverdale. So Betty, oh, she's always solving a mystery. She does not care that she's 15 years old and has a pre-calc test. the next morning? No, mama. No, she does not care. She'll be like crawling through the sewers to find an old skeleton of a prospector that somehow deals with a prophecy about the town of Riverdale and why the mosquitoes are falling from the sky. Again, not a real plot line. I should be writing for this show. But she's always solving a mystery. If there is a serial killer killing people in town, 15-year-old Betty Cooper is like, I need to be on the scene of the crime, Sherlock Holmesing at Vine Palace, you know, like she's solving crimes. So she's always a really fun character because she's actually involved in the plot. Then we have Veronica. Veronica comes to town. She's like a rich kid. Her father has done insider trading or embezzlement, some financial crime. He later becomes a full crook mobster, but we'll get to that later. So they've been run out of New York. Their assets have been seized. They've moved to Riverdale and are staying at the Pembroke, which is just like a hotel. So she's a very girly girl, very glamorous girl, rich kid, kind of fish out of water, from coming from this glamorous New York wealthy lifestyle to now small town America. She's a girl's girl. One thing about Veronica, will be wearing a gown to sixth period for no reason. Also loves to reference an old movie. One of her first lines on the show is, I'm breakfast at Tiffany's and this town is in cold blood. And it's like, we get it. You like movies. We got it. No, girl, we got it. You like movies. Okay, we're good. We're good here. You don't need to mention it every sentence. Also, they give her like business arcs later, which we cannot talk about until it's absolutely imperative because they're literally my villain origin story. I hate her businesses. And finally, we have Jughead. He's weird. He's a weirdo. He doesn't fit in and he doesn't want to fit in. Jughead, of course, played by Sweet Life of Zack and Cody alum Cole Sprouse. He's like the narrator of the show. He's writing a story about Riverdale because he's a writer. He's a fiction writer. He'll also write for the paper, but he is a fiction writer. He wants to be the Charles Bukowski of this fake timeline. That's what he wants. So he's like writing about the mysteries as they happen. He's depressed. No way about it. He's had a hard life. So he's kind of like depressed, snarky, not as optimistic as the rest of the people in town, but he's very much like a watcher. Like he is not a participator. He's not like a football guy or somebody who's like heavily involved in like the infrastructure of the high school, and he'll watch from the outside. We're really like seeing the show like through his eyes. He also loves to solve mysteries with Betty, so I have to love him. Like the character of Jughead makes questionable choices, but he's had a hard life and he's solving mysteries, so I really can't fault him. At the beginning of the show, it's revealed that he is homeless, and he also gets involved with like gangs later. We're not talking about the gangs yet because they literally make me want to put my head through a wall. Like I will end my life if I have to do a whole section on the gangs, and I read the script so I know that I did. So those are the main characters. Secondary characters are Cheryl Blossom. She starts out basically as an antagonist to the entire group. She's incredibly mean. She's just kind of like a mean girl, mean cheerleader, wants to be prom queen and that vibes. As the writers flesh her out more, we find out that this is kind of like its armor because she is a queer woman. I don't know if she's explicitly a lesbian or not, but she is a queer woman, and her parents are like incredibly emotionally abusive and also just like whack. And her brother dies in the first season. So she's just kind of living through her trauma any way she knows how. Cheryl loves a zinger and dresses in her iconic red all the time. You cannot pry this red out of her cold, dead hands. And one thing about the Blossoms, they're basically like a family. They run maple groves that have basically been in like the town for centuries or whatever. Surely there's unsavory lore that they've taken it from indigenous people. And because they run these like maple groves, they've been like mainstays and like incredibly powerful people in the town, but they've also pissed people off. There's all these like historical feuds, curses, and stuff. I don't know. As somebody who lives in Canada, this town I think is like literally canonically in New York, and I'm like, too much maple talk. I can put up with a lot of maple talk. I can put up with a lot of it, and it's too much. I don't believe that this is as valuable as the town seems to be saying it is. And maybe I'm wrong, but I also just know that the best maple syrup comes from more northern towns in Canada that are infinitely colder than where you guys are. You want to talk about the economics of the maple market, and you obviously do because you can't shut up about it, then you actually have to engage with my culture, Canada, and do your research. Thank you. We have Kevin. Kevin is introduced basically as Betty's gay best friend. That's not me being offensive. They don't give him a lot to do until later seasons. He's just like, slay, mama. Archie is so hot, and your hair looks so good, bestie. I love musicals. Like, he does get a romance in the first season, but it's very much like, closeted. Being gay is pain. And that's a lot of Kevin's storylines. The show is written by a gay man. Like, it's created by a gay man. You know, they obviously have queer people on the writing staff, and yet they're addicted to equating Kevin's queerness with pain. He does not get a relationship that ends well until the last season, when they get time traveled back to the 50s. His life is so bad in the modern day because so many bad things happen to him that being in a gay relationship in the 50s is better for him. We have Tony. Tony is introduced in the second season as this girl from the south side of town. The south side of town is like the bad side of town where the gangs live. One of the gangs is the South Side Serpents, which Tony is a part of. Again, I don't want to talk about gangs until it's literally necessary because they have no bearing on the plot other than to piss me the fuck off. Tony is introduced as like this very artsy, independent girl. She likes photography, kind of just like another foil for the regular main characters, which are generally quite wealthy. She comes from a lower income family and has had like a hard life, but still like wants to create. And she's fiercely independent. She gets in a relationship with Cheryl. And while I do think this relationship, which we will get more into later, is very good for representation on television, and I don't want to talk too bad about Choni, because to talk poorly about Choni is to have a death wish. It does assassinate her character a bit. Like, she becomes defined by her relationships to other people. She doesn't really have interests outside of her relationships. We have Reggie, who for the majority of the show is played by Charles Melton, who, Oscar snub. I love Charles Melton. I think he is fantastic in May, December. He used to be played by a different actor, and they had to recast him when that actor went to join 13 Reasons Why, another show that's truly maybe one of the most unhinged shows on television. Reggie is kind of like a jock in a himbo. He's very much a foil to Archie, to kind of show that like Archie, while popular, jock in a himbo, is also sensitive and artistic and wants more from his life and is kind of like internal and feeling feelings. And Reggie isn't. No thoughts, just vibes. He just wants to like play football. And I love that for him. He dates Veronica a lot. He's paired off with her. Him and Camila Mendez are, they have great just like chemistry. The pace of these scenes are like really nice. And he gets involved in kind of more of the like mobster, like we'll get into that a little bit later, but Veronica's father is like a mobster that runs the town of Riverdale, and Reggie is oftentimes like his henchman or whatever. And he's evil, but like kind of in like a pull the lever crunk kind of way where he's just muscle that like doesn't even really know what he's doing. We have Ethel, who is played by Barb from Stranger Things, and she's just kind of like creepy nerd. For a lot of the series, they have her kind of treated poorly, and then she'll do some evil shit. And in later seasons, they try to give her like a nice redemption arc, being like, girl, we treated you badly. We love you, Ethel. Okay. When they go back to the 50s, which I'll explain in depth in a bit, but basically Halley's Comet, which they call Bailey's Comet, is going to hit Riverdale and kill them all. So Tabitha, a character I have to explain to you in a second, who is a time witch, brings them all back to the past in the 50s to save them, where Ethel's parents, or Ethel's father, worked for Cheryl's father. Cheryl's father was inventing a nuke for Russia, and to keep him quiet, Clifford Blossom hired a milkman to kill them, and then to kill Ray Bradbury because he knew too much as well. Anyways, because that happens, the whole town votes for Ethel to be Miss Riverdale Teen Queen, like child beauty pageant. She gets that, uses the money to buy a car, and goes and becomes an animator in LA. So that's Ethel's story. We have Tabitha. Tabitha comes in later once we have a 7-year time jump. She is Pops's granddaughter. Pops runs the iconic diner that everybody is obsessed with going to after school. I once read the Stephen King novel in which the main character has to go back in time and stop the Kennedy assassination. And it's such boomer porn in the sense that like he goes back in time and the first thing he does is get a milkshake and he's like, they don't make milkshakes like this anymore. It's so much being like, yes, we had segregation, but the milkshakes were good. And you're like, wow, wild point of view. Anyways, that reminds me of this show because people are obsessed with milkshakes in this show. So Tabitha has come and moved to Riverdale to help her grandfather run the diner. I love Tabitha. I think the actress that plays her is fantastic. She's just like a hardworking girl, is very driven and like logical. So like there's a period where Jughead, who's drinking a lot, is like, oh my God, I almost got abducted by aliens. And she's like, surely that can't be the case. Let's investigate. And it's nice to have a single character with a brain cell on the show. It's nice. We have Josie, who is from Josie and the Pussycats. She is basically like a singer, star. She wants to be like a famous pop star. And she doesn't really have any other discernible personality traits because she gets shafted by this show. The writers do her so dirty. They just write her off. She's just gone. And it's like for being a diva. We have Fangs, who is a Southside Serpent, a gang member as well. He's kind of like a bi king. He's brought on to like date Kevin and date Tony. No real discernible personality, but he's bi. Then we have Nana Rose, which is Cheryl's grandmother. Cheryl's parents across the board, Clifford and Penelope, evil, evil, just evil. Whenever they're involved, bad news. Their mother, Nana Blossom, who is Cheryl's grandmother, is like this old woman who's blind in a wheelchair. And I bring her up just because she's like literally a plot catch-all. If they cannot figure out how to tie up the loose strings of a plot point, they just have Nana Rose doing some whack, crazy shit. And you can't argue with it because the character has been so unhinged and nuts in the past that you're like, I guess they cannot figure out what the explanation for these fake aliens they've written into the plot are. So then they're like, oh, well, Nana Rose, well, her husband had illegitimate children. So Nana Rose found a barren couple in the forest and gave them the children, and then they did incest because the show is obsessed with incest. So don't worry about it. Oh, Cheryl's ancestor, Abigail Blossom, a witch who was burned at the stake, is back for revenge and has possessed Cheryl. Well, don't worry about it. Nana Rose will allow herself to be possessed by Abigail, die, killing Abigail, and then be fine and be back alive. That's just what Nana Rose does. And finally, we have Hiram Lodge. Hiram is like the big bad of the show. He's evil, he's a mobster. He often wants to like destroy Riverdale for financial gain. He's like, there's palladium, which is like their fucking gold, in the mines underneath this building, so I gotta burn down the town to get that valuable stuff. He just wants to make a quick buck, and he really wants to destroy Riverdale in doing it. He hates Archie. At one point, he fist fights Archie when I believe Archie is like canonically 16. He frames Archie for murder and sends Archie to jail. Like, there are wild things that happen in this show because this adult man wants to beat the shit out of this 15-year-old kid. I love it. Mark Consuelos is the actor who plays Hiram Lodge, and he is having the time of his life. He is so good. He's just like, this character is evil. I'm not playing him with like nuance and like, oh, he's had a hard life. It's just, no, evil. Evil. Like, you know, not to bring up turf J.K. Rowling's work, trigger warning, turf talk. But you know, like Bellatrix Lestrange and how she's just like, I'm evil. That's my thing. It's not like, oh my God, I was in love with your mom and you didn't want to have sex with me, so now I don't know what to do. It's like, no, I'm evil. That's kind of my whole thing. My character's thing is that she's evil. That's what Mark Consuelos does. Like, it's so much more fun to just watch somebody be like, so my thing is I'm a capitalist businessman. That's evil. It's so fun. Now let's talk about relationships. Well, Riverdale oftentimes deals with mysteries and thriller aspects. There's a crazy amount of like David Lynch imagery, which I've talked about before. It's like, why is this episode of Riverdale Lynchian? What's going on there? What's the overlap between David Lynch fans and Riverdale viewers? I want to know the stats on that. Get those on my desk by Monday, please. At its core, Riverdale is still a teen drama, which means that everyone dates each other. Everyone dates each other. The main love triangle is between Archie, Betty, and Veronica. Betty has a crush on Archie. Archie's just kind of like clueless to that. Then Archie has a crush on Veronica because she's glamorous. But then it's like, oh, does he have a crush on Betty? Does he have a crush on Veronica? In later seasons, they have Veronica and Betty kiss. They also have them kiss in like the pilot. I've got beef with this. Not because I don't think people should be kissing. I think in every single one of my shows, every single character should kiss. That's just how I operate. But they have Betty and Veronica kiss so much, and not once do Jughead and Archie kiss. I don't even think we get an on-screen kiss between Reggie and Archie. And in the 50s, they watch wrestling together. If you were brave, Riverdale, you would have the men kiss, the straight men kiss as well. That's all I'm saying. So over the course of the show, Archie dates Veronica, Betty, Josie from Josie and the Pussycats. This is when he's in his artist fucking musician era. Kill me now. He also dates Val, who is one of the backup singers in the Pussycats, and his English teacher. We're gonna get to Miss Grundy later. Criminal. Lock her up, please. He also kisses Cheryl. He kisses Kevin. He kisses Joaquin, who is a gang member in the Southside Serpents, who is in prison with him, and they kiss before doing a prison cage match. We'll get to that. He kisses Riley Keough from Daisy Jones and the Six. She's playing like a farm girl who takes him in when he goes on the run after he escapes from prison, and then she tries to kill him. And as I mentioned before, I don't think Archie and Reggie kiss on screen, but when we go back in time to the 50s, they get like I never thought about being this way, but I guess in the 50s, you literally had to get like a roll of film that was, and they watched like a wrestling video together. They thought it was like straight, but then it's like gay in the 50s, which is just men kind of loosely wrestling with each other, but like mounting each other in like the style of anal. Sorry. And they like watch it together and like get turned on. And then I think later they like spend the night together, but it's off screen. You're cowards, Riverdale. What is the point of bringing everyone back to the 50s in the last season and destroying any semblance of reality if I cannot just have random Reggie and Archie / fanfic? I'm pissed about this. Betty dates Jughead. That's like her big main relationship in the show. Bughead is what their like ship name is. They break up and they don't get back together because Lily Reinhardt and Cole Sprouse were dating for a long time and then broke up, and I guess it was messy. They didn't want to be in scenes together, so they pair her up more with like Archie. She has an FBI boyfriend named Glenn for a bit because she joins the FBI when she's an adult and a child, but this is when she's in the FBI as an adult. She also dates Kevin in the 50s, but he's closeted and is like, I don't want to kiss you or have sex with you. Let's just not do that. But it's because I'm waiting for marriage, not for any other reason. It's not because I'm gay or anything. It's because I love God and I respect you as a woman. No other reason. He comes out later and they break up, but she does date Kevin canonically in the 50s. She also kisses Veronica, as I said before. Veronica dates Archie, Reggie. She has like a casual kind of will they, won't they with Jughead in the 50s. I actually loved this and thought that it should have been explored more, mainly because it's really interesting. Like, it's a more heightened version because in the 50s, Veronica is like very glamorous. Her parents, instead of being like business New York kind of socialites, are basically like Lucy and Ricardo from like I Love Lucy. So they're like famous TV stars. So she's like very, very glamorous LA girl. And he like lives in a train car. I liked it a lot, actually. And I thought the chemistry was interesting and good. She also has like a past relationship with a guy from New York called Nick St. James. He just comes in whenever the show needs like a character who is canonically a sexual assaulter to have bad things happen to him. I believe the last we see of him is when the devil steals his soul. So that's great. And Jughead dates Betty. Veronica, I think. They have like the will they, won't they. Tabitha is his main relationship after Lily Reinhardt and Cole Sprouse break up. Love their chemistry as well. You know, I think that he has great chemistry with like almost every actor he's with, which is a skill set. I don't think he dates Tony, but I think it's set up that they might date before they pair her up with Cheryl. And he has a girlfriend from the past named Jessica when he's like an adult, I guess, okay? He also kisses Ethel once. I think she does that, though, to blackmail him because they're trying to figure out who's using the D&D game. Like, they have Griffins and Gargoyles, which is Riverdale's version of Dungeons and Dragons. And they're like Ethel, who is using griffins and gargoyles to kill people? Who is the gargoyle king? The person who's using griffins and gargoyles to make people like kill themselves by drinking cyanide. And she's like, I'll tell you if you kiss me. And then he kisses her and then she doesn't tell him. Which fair, draft up a contract, baby girl. Additionally, because Riverdale does do a pretty good job of having several different characters on the show be queer, you can make arguments about representation being good, but there is a lot of it on the show, which I think is a really good step forward based on the history of teen shows. Like in Pretty Little Liars, we get Emily and Allison, but like the people they put Emily with, the shower Harvey of it all, they give her the most rancid love interests, where in this show, they genuinely have the queer people date around to a certain extent, which I do enjoy, but this makes it so much more complicated. This is realistic because in any friend group with more than 50% queer people, the most unhinged love pentagrams emerge, but still. So an example of this is Kevin starts dating Fangs, and it's kind of like a good boy and bad boy from the side of the tracks. Will he come out? Whatever. They break up when they're adults because they are going to get married and have a baby on the way. And Kevin is crumbling under this pressure and starts cruising and having sex with truck drivers in the woods. Little wrinkle in this story is, of course, that this is when a murderous truck driver is killing people on the highway. So this is incredibly self-destructive and dangerous. He later tells his father that this is because his mother was homophobic to him and he has internalized homophobia, so he's, I guess, hooking up with people when a serial killer is around. Anyways, Fangs finds out that Kevin is cheating on him and they break up. Their surrogate is Tony. And Fangs and Tony start dating because Cheryl and Tony broke up and her grandmother doesn't approve of the relationship. So then Fangs and Tony start dating and are like, let's just raise this baby on our own. That's so complicated, but I love it. It very much is like evocative of like when you're playing with dolls as a child and you're like, my character is a skier and she's bisexual and addicted to pills. And her father is a famous businessman, but he died in 9/11. And your friend's like, well, that's so funny because my doll, she's an animator and her parents were murdered by a milkman, but it was a milkman hired by the guy who invented a nuke for Russia, and her parents knew too much about this nuke for Russia, right? So they died. She gets blamed for the murder, but then when they find out it's not her, she wins an animating scholarship and a beauty pageant and moves to LA, and then you make them kiss. It's awesome. Also, Cheryl gets like a revolving door of lesbians who just come in for like 2 episodes to like a season when she's not dating Tony. They're like, this is Margaret. She's got glasses. She's a femme lesbian. Butches don't exist in Riverdale. Don't worry about it. You'll kiss for a bit, but you'll end up with Tony and we all know that. Let's move on. Also, all the parents date each other. Archie has a mom and a dad. His dad is played by Luke Perry, and Luke Perry has tragically died while the shooting of the show is happening. So he gets killed on the show, I believe, as well, which is very sad. But his parents are divorced, so they date people. Betty's parents eventually get divorced, and they date people. Jughead's parents are divorced at the beginning of the series and date different people, although his mom is basically not on the show that much. But his dad dates people. Kevin's dad dates around. His mom is on a Navy base being homophobic, I guess. He dates like the mayor, who's Josie's mom. Oh my God. Okay, sexism, internalized sexism. I'm a misogynist. Veronica's parents get divorced and date different people. It's a mess. Every single adult in this town, I don't know what's in the water. They're all getting divorced and they're all fucking each other. I do want to note that this show ends in the 1950s with all 4 main characters, Betty, Archie, Veronica, and Jughead, in a polycule. Explicitly. Not like, oh, they're kind of like poly. It is explicitly said in the 50s being like, you guys are poly.
After Angel Tabitha's last visit, I remembered what it was like being with Jughead and being with Archie. And Archie and Veronica remembered what it was like being with each other. But Veronica and Jughead had just started a thing, and remembering all of that sort of just took the pressure off of us having to make a single choice. So the 4 of us realized that we could and maybe should just be together at the same time.
Are you saying that for the past year, the 4 of you have been dating each other?
Love it. The final aspect of this section I want to talk about is, of course, the teen sex bunker. I've talked about this in the recap videos, but if we're talking about the history of Riverdale, we must mention the teen sex bunker. Basically, it's a 1940s like bomb shelter that's in the forest that's owned by Dilton Doily. He's like a Boy Scout. He dies because he drinks cyanide to sacrifice himself to the Gargoyle King. I wouldn't worry about it. But afterwards, the main cast basically takes it over and it becomes this place where every child on the show has sex. Like, that's what it's for. I bring that up because it's a bomb shelter, so there's no windows. So you can only imagine that when you climb down the little ladder, the air is moist, wet, stinky. The sheets on the bed, crusty. This is me grabbing the sheets. Nobody's putting those in the laundry. Disgusting. But you can count on one thing in Riverdale. People are having sex in the teen sex bunker. Next section, love is love. We're going to talk about representation in Riverdale. Wild way for me to frame this, because really we're talking about the queer representation, but also the show's obsession with incest. They're obsessed with it. There's no way around it. You might be saying, it seems to me that any amount of incest in a teen show is too much incest. And to that I would say, yes, you would be correct. But on a greater level, imagine in your brain what is too much incest for a teen show. Multiply it by 100. That's how much is in this show. The show is obsessed with it. They're obsessed with it. It's like they've been sponsored by incest. Like, it's wild, okay? So an example of this, the Coopers, which is Betty's family, and the Blossoms, which is Cheryl's family, they're both like founding families of the town. They're at war because Cheryl's grandfather killed Betty's grandfather, but they were also brothers, but nobody talked about this. I have issues with this because no one remembers that their great grandfathers are brothers, but that's not far enough away to forget it. Do you know what I mean? So basically, Cheryl and Betty are like first cousins. That's fine if it weren't for the fact that Betty's sister and Cheryl's brother were dating cousins, nothing but love and light. To that, I'm obsessed with that, and had twins. He was murdered before he knew she was pregnant. He did know, but he was murdered before she could have the kids. She had twins, cousin twins. Love that. And nobody stopped them. No one stopped them. Also later on, Cheryl's mom dates Betty's dad. Cheryl and Betty are both related on their father's side. So you would say, well, this is not directly incest because Penelope, Cheryl's mom, is not related to the Blossoms by blood because she married in. And to that I'd say, oh baby girl, well, you were out there having fun. I was studying the Blade of Riverdale. I was studying the lore, and Penelope was actually adopted as a child into the Blossom family to be raised as Clifford's bride. So while not by blood, this is still technically incest. I talked a little bit about it before, but the Mothman/alien plotline in which Tabitha and Jughead find a up skeleton, and Jughead thinks he almost was abducted by aliens, turns out to be that Nana Rose's husband had illegitimate children, which she gave to a barren couple in the forest. Then these people lived away from everyone else in the forest and had incest. They did incest. Sure, you don't even need to do it at that point. That's what's insane about this one. Also, in season 1, it's implied that Jason and Cheryl, who are twin brother and sister, have an incestuous relationship. They walk this back in season 2 when they make Cheryl a part of the main cast. But also, remember Afterlife with Archie, that comic that Roberto wrote when he joined Archie Comics? They are incestuous, confirmed in those comics. So that's awesome. Also, Betty and Jughead date, and then Betty's mom and Jughead's dad date at the same time. So they all move in together. So Betty is living with her boyfriend because their parents are dating. Also, in high school, their parents date. Like Betty's mom and Jughead's dad were dating when they were in high school. They had a baby together. So Betty has a half brother with her boyfriend. I know it's a small town, but Jesus Christ. Now let's talk about queer representation in the show. Might come as a surprise to you, but the queer representation in a show written about a comic book in the 50s isn't perfect. They try. I do think they make strides because, again, they do have characters that are explicitly queer and in queer relationships and have sex, which has not really been done too much in the past. I will say that a big thing when the show was first on air, Betty and Jughead got together, is that in the comics, Jughead is canonically asexual. This is later and in an offshoot. It's not in the traditional Archie comics because they were from the 40s. And I think if you said the word asexual, everyone's head would literally explode like the nuke that Cheryl's parents invented. But he's canonically asexual in more modern comics, and he is not asexual on the show. They don't explore it literally at any point in the show, which is kind of weird to me. Like, you could do it later. Like, he could explore it later. They don't touch that. I think it would be really cool to have a show with an explicitly asexual character. I think that representation would have been really good. But hey, can't ask for too much. Also, this show loves not only gay equals pain, that trope, but they also love homophobe is secretly gay. The trope of anytime somebody's homophobic, it's because they're actually gay. I think this trope was interesting the first time it happened on TV. I'm not interested or surprised by it now. It's very obvious and I think lazy. I do think that sometimes this is true, like that this happens in real life, but I think more often than not, the undercurrent of the joke or the trope, that person is being homophobic because they're gay, is ha ha ha, isn't it funny that they're gay? They're gay and gay people do homophobia. Straight people would never do homophobia, first of all. Straight people have never done anything wrong, and they would never do homophobia, so if homophobia is happening, it simply must be from a gay person that can't accept themselves. Why can't they accept themselves? Because of other gay people don't ask questions. I do understand that you can have an interesting layered conversation about that. There could be an interesting use of that trope. It's not happening here. Like, just not. I don't know, you're not Karofsky dating Blaine in Glee, so I'm not interested. They also do this trope twice with the same people. So Kevin is dating Moose, who's a different boyfriend he has, who's kind of like a jock. They have sex in the teen sex bunker, and while that's happening, Moose's father poses as the murderous serial killer, the Gargoyle King, which I mentioned before, uses their version of Dungeons and Dragons to get children to commit suicide. He poses as the Gargoyle King, drags both of them out into the woods to scare them because he doesn't want them to be gay. It's revealed that this is because Moose's father was gay, and is gay, and was in love with Kevin's father, but was rejected or whatever. The only reason they're saved is because Cheryl, for some reason, starts shooting arrows with her bow to save them. What was the plan here? And then they do this again. Back in the 50s, Archie's whole thing, because they give him these, we'll get into that in my Archie fucking sucks section of this video, but Archie wants to be a beat poet in the 1950s. Kill me. He wants to write poetry and ride the rails. And his uncle, Frank, is like, that's for gay people. Gay people write poetry. Don't be gay. Join the famously straight Navy. You need to join the Navy like a straight person would. You think a gay person would be in the Navy? Then it's revealed that he's gay and he dates Sheriff Keller Kevin's dad. You can't just do that plot point basically the same twice. Also, in the last episode of the season, which I will be recapping, they have a kind of thing where it's like, what happened to them? Where are they now? And it's revealed that Frank and Sheriff Keller are murdered by a gay sex worker they pick up. They're robbed and murdered. To be gay is to be murdered, and you must accept this. Also, they call him a hustler in the show, which I have questions about. I guess it's time to talk about it. I guess we have to talk about Miss Grundy. I don't want to, but if we're talking about Riverdale, we have to talk about Miss Grundy. Miss Grundy is Archie's teacher in the first season when he's canonically 15. She's the music teacher, and he wants to get into music. That's his whole thing in the season 1. He plays football and also wants to do music, and it's like High School Musical came out 10 years ago. New thought, I beg. And she's giving him music lessons and also grooming him. Okay, and she's like, I don't want to groom you. We shouldn't be together, and yet I'm grooming you. And it's like, baby's 15. Obviously, KJ Apa, I think he's 18 in the first season, but he also looks old. Like, he just has always looked like 25. So it doesn't seem as horrific as truly what a 15-year-old would look like. And I hate this plot point because you can tell the writers are like, yeah, pretty complicated power dynamics. And it's like, no, you're just showing this relationship to your primarily teenage audience and desensitizing them to how f***ed up it is. The reason this plot point basically exists is because Jason, who's been murdered in the first season and the whole mysteries about his death, Archie hears a gunshot when he's hooking up with Miss Grundy in her car, but they can't be like, hey, we heard a gunshot because Miss Grundy was doing crime. And what I hate about this is they're like having steamy sex in her car, and like it's like when the handprint's on the window and it's like supposed to be like so hot, and she's like licking a lollipop and has little like Lolita glasses, and it's like these relationships are not hot and you're making them hot, and that's being weird. Like, so much of dating an adult when you're a teenager is them like being like, you should listen to these movies. I don't want to get too into it, but from personal experience, if you're a teenager and an adult is trying to date you, it's mainly them telling you what movies to watch and what albums to listen to, and then you don't come. Like, it's not this. So I just hate it. I hate it. Eventually in this season, Archie grows to understand that this relationship is predatory. They do like have that in there, and characters besides Archie are like, hey, that's bad. That's a bad relationship. You should break up. So that's good. And then in the next season, there's a serial killer called the Black Hood that strangles her with a cello bow. So hey, broken clock, right twice a day. Have to love that. I don't love when violence against women is utilized on TV for entertainment, but got to give it up to that. Obsessed with that. I guess if they're a criminal, it's fine. They give her like a weird redemption arc when they go back in time to the 50s where she's his English teacher and Archie falls in love with her and it's like, let's date. And she's like, no, it's wrong. It's like, okay, cool. Now I'm gonna give you a quick overview of seasons 1 through 4, just so you understand what's happening in the show. I'm giving you some good sprinkles, but just so you can understand the full overview of what happens in the show. In season 1, the main mystery is that Cheryl's twin brother, Jason Blossom, is found dead in Sweetwater River, and it's like, who killed him? It's a good murder mystery. I would suggest watching it. You can watch my video on it if you want to figure out who it is. But it's like a genuinely interesting and good murder mystery of like what happened. Is it perfect? No, but it is actually like a concise season. Season 2 is about the Black Hood, who is a serial killer that wears a little black like ski mask and murders people. Shoots him just in broad daylight at Pop's, the diner. He shoots Archie's dad, but he lives. Archie creates a vigilante group at the age of 16, which is a wild choice. I have to spoil this because it plays into later seasons, but I'm not happy about it. Eventually, it is revealed that Betty's father is the Black Hood, and it's the serial killer gene, and he's doing it because he loves Betty and the town is rotten and he was killing bad people. But he wasn't just killing bad people. So what's going on there? Season 3, Archie is framed for murder by Veronica's father. He's being represented in court by his mother, and there's no evidence tying him to the murder, but he's like, I plead guilty. Quirky of me. So he goes into jail, juvie, and the warden makes him do cage fights. At night in the pool, these evil men make these children basically go into this like drained empty pool and box to the death and make bets on it. And this is also the season where Griffins and Gargoyles is distributed throughout town, but there's somebody posing as the Gargoyle King. And part of the role-playing game is you have to sacrifice yourself by drinking cyanide, so people are dying. Also, there is a cult run by Chad Michael Murray called The Farm. They are revealed to eventually, get Betty's mom and all these different people join. Kevin joins, Tony joins, all these different people join the farm, and it's revealed that they harvest organs. I don't really remember why they harvest organs, but they get people to join, and then they're like, we're gonna enlighten you, and then they knock them out and steal their organs. This season has a lot going on. I do like it. Season 1 is great. Season 3 is great. I also love season 4. Season 4, Jughead goes to a private school called Stonewall Prep and basically gets secret history. Like someone on the Riverdale writing staff read Secret History and was like, let's do that, but weird. Where basically they make a murder pact to try and kill him, and then they go off the rails. This is not what happens in the Secret History. He fakes his own death, and then the Stonewall Prep kids try to frame Betty for his murder. Also, Veronica's dad starts running a for-profit prison because there's palladium, that valuable mineral, under the prison, and they're mining it. Also, he does a prison break to devalue Riverdale, and all the prisoners destroy the town instead of just running away. Also, Betty is working at FBI Junior. She's literally 16 or 17 at this point, and is working at the FBI with her half-brother, who's also related to Jughead, and then he's also a serial killer. Great. Also, there is somebody leaving creepy VHSs around town, and at first it's just 6 hours straight of just shooting the front of their house, just kind of creepy VHS tapes. But then it becomes acting out really scary little scenes of people murdering people, but they're wearing masks of people, where at one point it's a Clifford Blossom mask doing a crime, killing someone. Do you know what I mean? I love this plot line. It is so good. It's one of my favorites. It's genuinely very, very freaky, and I think it's great. Now we're gonna enter the time jump. So after season 4, they have the characters graduate high school because the actors looking 30 at this point. There's no way around it. So they try to age them up into adults. So they jump 7 years into the future. But this wrecks the timeline because the last season happened in 2020 and the next season happened in 2021. So they're 7 years have passed. It used to be 2020 and now it's 2021. It makes no sense. They've aged 7 years, but it's only been a year canonically. This is not like them fucking with the timeline for fun. They just don't give a fuck. So in season 5, Jughead is an alcoholic writer. Veronica is the she-wolf of Wall Street and like is a stock trader. Archie fought in a vague war that happened in 2020, but he's dressed like he's in World War I or maybe II, and he does trench warfare, so explain that to me. Betty is in the FBI and was held hostage by a serial killer called the Trash Bag Killer. She was held in a hole for weeks, and he's still out there. Hiram wants to destroy Riverdale in this season so he can build a wealthy suburb and run a highway through Riverdale to his wealthy suburb. So Trash Bag Killer's coming after Betty. Cheryl finds out she's an actual witch who can do witchcraft. Jughead begins working at Pops and befriends Tabitha, and they basically try to figure out if aliens are real. Polly, Betty's sister, is working as a sex worker and gets murdered. This season ends with like the main 4 characters becoming leaders in the town. They're like running the town by group. Like they're literally like 4 different mayors of the town, if that makes sense. And then Cheryl declares her mansion a sovereign state. In season 6, Betty and Archie finally get together and have sex, but then Hiram plants a bomb under Archie's bed and it explodes. It rips the space-time continuum, and we go into an alternate universe called Riverdale. Yeah, where everyone sacrifices Archie in like a pagan ritual. They escape this alternate universe by locking, there's 2 Jugheads in this universe, locking one in a room and having him keep the universe running by imagination and writing stories. Sure. Back in the real timeline, the devil comes to Riverdale, and everyone makes a little deal with him, and he them up, obviously. They also get superpowers. Archie has super strength. Betty can read auras and tell if someone is evil. Veronica has magical blood. Jughead is deaf and can read minds. Bingo the dog, Archie's dog, can heal himself. And Tabitha is a time witch and Riverdale's guardian angel. She goes back in time to try and stop the assassination of MLK. Doesn't do it, but she tries. And then Percival Pickens is like this season's really big bad guy, not even the devil. And he's a witch who was murdered in Pilgrim times, and he travels to modern day and wants to destroy Pops so we can build a train station there, because it's like the boundaries between the underworld and our world are thin there, so we can make a train that goes to the underworld so we can raise an undead army and take over the world. This season ends obviously with Bailey's comet trying to hit Riverdale, so Tabitha has to take everyone back to the 50s. And in season 7, they're in the 50s. They don't remember that they're from the future, so they're just high school seniors in the 50s living their life. Archie wants to be a poet. Betty wants to have sex, but it's the 50s. Jughead writes comics, but the comics are being censored by McCarthyism. And Veronica runs a full-ass movie theater in the 50s as a child, 16. Cheryl and Tony are gay in the 50s. It's like revealed that Cheryl was supposed to be triplets. So it's supposed to be Cheryl, her brother Jason, who was murdered, and Julian. But Julian gets absorbed in the womb. But in the 50s, for some reason, Jason was absorbed in the womb. So Julian is alive. The actor who plays Julian slays it. He's so funny. Such a bright spot in this season. Obsessed. Kevin also has a boyfriend named Clay, and they are in a gay interracial relationship in the 50s. Actually giving Kevin a nice relationship. This show is in the final season. We're in the trenches. So Tabitha basically goes around trying to figure out how she can bring them back to the future. She finds out that she can't, so they have to stay in the 50s. That's how this show ends. In the finale, we see that Betty is an old woman and the only surviving member. Everyone else has died. And Jughead visits her as like an angel and is like, I can take you back to one day in your life before you die. What is it? And she goes, senior year, last year of high school, baby. Last day of my last year of high school. Insane. That could not be me. You could not force me to go back. So she goes back to the last day of high school. This is when she finds out she's Polly. Great. Archie reads a truly terrible poem that references to the show that's like, we talked about the ups and downs of high school football. Oh, what a joy. And remember when Cheryl had that possessed little toy? Horrible.
Tomorrow we won't see each other in study hall. So here's a few memories for us to recall. And no, I won't be mentioning the epic highs and lows of high school football. Funny to think you were never prom queen. Then again, you were once upon a time a human dialysis machine. Cheryl Blossom, you're as rich as a Rockefeller. You also kept your beloved Jason down in a cellar. Jughead Jones needs no intro. You made his teacher jump out a window. Look at you now. You're a rock star greaser. A long way from a cult member who stole organs to put in a freezer.
And we find out how everyone dies. So Fangs makes it as a big rock star because he wants to be like Elvis in this season. Who cares? And then he dies in a car accident like a year later. Kevin and Clay move to New York to participate in the Harlem Renaissance. Cheryl and Tony become activists. Veronica makes movies and becomes a movie exec, like the first woman movie exec. Jughead writes comics and basically creates Mad Magazine. Julian dies in Vietnam, so I guess that war is real in this timeline. I said before, Sheriff Keller and Uncle Frank get murdered by a hustler. Archie had like a regular life, and she like tells him in universe, like she goes back in time and is like, hey Archie, I'm from the future. Do you want to know what your life is like? You find this wonderful woman and you move out west and you have a great life together. And if this was me, first of all, this breaks every single rule of time travel so bad. And also if this was me, I'd be like, but how do I die? But how do I die? Is it cancer? It's cancer, right? It's cancer. Is it blink if it's cancer? It's yeah. Then Betty dies as an old lady in the parking lot of Pops and goes to heaven. And it's revealed that heaven is a diner in the sky with everyone from your high school class. She is a full child and a husband, and her husband isn't there. Great. Okay, what is time? We touched on this a little bit, but the concept of time is baffling in this show. This is partially because of the aesthetic, where it kind of looks like the 50s, but it kind of looks like 2021. It's impossible to know what is real in the timeline, what's not real. It's impossible to know what is like time appropriate and what is not. Besides the 7-year time jump that takes place over one single year, there's also the war Archie goes to, where he's literally doing trench warfare in the year of our Lord 2020. What war are you fighting, babes? I want specifics. Where were you? What country? Were you doing colonial? It feels like you were maybe doing oil interests. Were you doing oil interests, Archie? Feels like Archie might be doing oil interests. Also in season 1, Cheryl is 17 and the rest of the group is 15. But then when they realize they want her to like be a main character, they retcon it and make her 15. So the timeline, so time there also doesn't exist. Also, like, no one uses cell phones or laptops, but the Real Housewives exists. It's fine. I don't think it's like intentionally blurring the lines or whatever, like some people say, but it is worth noting. And that leads me to pop culture references and Brad Rayburry. Roberto loves a pop culture reference. He loves to have a character reference culture in universe of the show. And I don't necessarily hate this. I think it's kind of fun and very like, it creates a tone and a voice of the show. But it gets strange when I guess they can't get the rights to certain things. So certain pop culture references are just normal. They use the name of the thing, as it were, in the world, you know? I'm Breakfast at Tiffany's, but this town is In Cold Blood. Those are both books and movies, and they're both using their real name. But then they also sometimes Riverdale-ify it. So instead of In Cold Blood, it'd be like Out of Warm Blood kind of thing, where they around with it just a little bit. And this is fine, but because it's not consistent, there are just some things that are real in universe of Riverdale and other things that get Riverdale-ified, and it creates this universe and this reality that baffles me, that I cannot understand. So here are some things that are real in the Riverdale universe that use their real actual names. We have Breakfast at Tiffany's and In Cold Blood, the Real Housewives franchise, the song Great Balls of Fire, but instead of whoever wrote it, it's implied that Fangs has written it, Martin Luther King Jr. and his assassination, Emmett Till, who was a real-life child who was lynched in the South in the 50s, Next to Normal the musical, which stars Gavin Creel, who is in Moulin Rouge on Broadway, who is playing a part that has also been played by Casey Cott's brother, and Casey Cott plays Kevin. So Kevin's, in real life's brother, is playing the same role as the star of a musical who also starred in another musical that's real in the Riverdale universe. Make it make sense. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the person, exists in the Riverdale universe because in the Riververse, there is Katie Keene, there is Pretty Little Liars, Riverdale, and The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. So Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the person, does a crossover and will sometimes come into Riverdale. Also, in the last season of the show, Jughead invents a comic called Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So the comic book exists as well, not related. He's not like, oh, like my friend Sabrina. No. Ray Bradbury exists because at one point books are being burned and Jughead's like, Ray Bradbury would not be happy about this. Remember that. Langston Hughes exists. Allen Ginsberg exists. W.E.B. Du Bois exists. The concept of Don't Ask, Don't Tell exists. Nancy Drew exists. Sundown Towns exist, communism exists, and Senator Joseph McCarthy exists. Things that are Riverdale-ified include Justin Gingerlake instead of Justin Timberlake, Vidal Maestro instead of Fidel Castro, The Bachelorette instead of The Bachelorette, Phoebes 20 Under 20 instead of the Forbes 30 Under 30, Griffins and Gargoyles instead of Dungeons and Dragons. Brad Rayburry is a character on the show who is essentially Ray Bradbury. All of his books are like, it's like October County instead of November County or whatever. So Jughead has implied the existence of Ray Bradbury in the previous season. And then in a new season, Brad Rayburry exists, has all the same books as Ray Bradbury, who has been implied to exist, but they're a little different. Drives me up the fucking wall. There's somebody named Brett Weston Wallace as a reference to Bret Easton Ellis, the author. Then there's Donna Sweet in reference to Donna Tartt, the author. The Cost of Pepper is the name of the lesbian novel that they all read instead of course, The Price of Salt. Charles Chickens instead of Charles Dickens. There's a prison called Shankshaw Prison instead of Shawshank. Game Boys are called Game Lads. Instead of TGI Fridays, they have TGI Thursdays. At one point, Veronica said I had to choose between going to Elton John's Oscar party or the Vanity Fair Oscar party. So Elton John is real and the Oscars are real, but Vanity Fair is called Vanity Flair. Tracy True exists, and Tracy True is this universe's version of Nancy Drew, but Nancy Drew is also a book series. Instead of the 4 seasons, it's called the 5 Seasons Hotel. Sarah Lawrence College is renamed Sarah Florence College. The list goes on and on. This just drives me insane because it's like you can never guess what's going to be real and what's going to be Riverdale-ified. Vidal Maestro instead of Vidal Castro. I screamed. I could not believe my eyes. Next, let's talk about the dialogue. Riverdale is kind of like famous for its insane dialogue. It feels like every couple of years a TWIP will surface on Twitter or X, and it would just be out of context a clip from Riverdale, and everyone's like, what the hell's going on this show? Because the Riverdale dialogue is nuts. And I feel like after the highs and lows of football, which we'll get to, that famous quote went viral, the writers kind of knew, and I honest to God believe they wrote some absolute clunker, crazy lines because they wanted it to go viral. Like, that's my true belief in my heart of hearts. Charles Melton, who plays Reggie, when he was kind of doing a campaign to get an Oscar nomination, he gave an interview. He said along the lines of like, Riverdale was my Juilliard. And I do believe this because if you can sell these lines, you can literally do anything. It's like practicing walking, but on a tightrope on fire. Like, you're starting on hard mode, you're starting on X Games mode, and after that, everything's just a cakewalk. Here are some choice sections of dialogue, some of my favorites and some of the most popular ones. Of course, we have Archie in Juvie.
Not me. I dropped out in the 4th grade to run drugs to support my nana.
That means you haven't known the triumphs and defeats, the epic highs and lows of high school football.
Then we have Jughead's I'm Weird monologue. I think this is the first one to really go viral. Betty has thrown Jughead a surprise party and he's upset about it and in the garage, and she's like, why are you upset? And he goes,
in case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. I don't fit in, and I don't want to fit in. Have you ever seen me without this stupid hat on? That's weird.
Oscar. This is a less famous one, but I think about it maybe once every day. In town, somebody burns down the bus stop, and Archie goes, who would burn down a bus stop? Where will people wait for the bus? That's great. When Betty is being framed for Jughead's murder, she asks one of the girls who is framing her to meet her in the forest, and she goes,
I'm sorry, Donna, but I'm the ultimate wild card. I am the daughter of the Black Hood, the nightmare from next door. I'm training with the FBI, and I'm coming for you, you psycho bitch.
No notes there. Oscar. Archie is being tracked down by like a fucking murderer and calls Veronica and is like, hey, Veronica, we can't be together yet because anybody who's connected to me is gonna get absolutely murdered.
You were it for me. Everything I could have ever wanted. I saw our whole future.
Because we're endgame, Archie.
When the trash bag killer, the murderous serial killer that is tracking Betty down and covered in trash bags, comes to kill Archie, he's holding a knife to Archie, and Bingo the dog walks into the room.
Bingo! Bingo, kill!
Cheryl and Kevin are running a congregation that Cheryl's mom is like running a religion, and then Cheryl and Kevin want to take it over from her. And Cheryl does this by performing 3 miracles. And one of them is picking up bees, like picking up a bunch of like a beehive and having bees swarm around her. And she goes to her mother, Mother, enough!
Be gone from my temple, or I will smite thee. For I am Cheryl Blossom, queen of the bees.
This show literally makes you feel like you've dropped acid. And finally, Kevin wrote a short story, I believe, about his relationship with Clay, his boyfriend. This is when they're back in the 50s. And somebody says, wow, Kevin, you really captured what it's like to be in a queer interracial relationship in the 1950s. And I get why they didn't use period appropriate terms, but queer was a slur in the 50s. And I don't feel like they'd use interracial. I think they would say a slur, even if they mean it nicely. But I love it. Next, we have to talk about the musical episodes on Riverdale. They are iconic. I like them for the most part, even if they're cheesy and not good. I like it when they're in universe singing, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of times it'll be like the school musical. Later they lose that, and I don't care for it, but that's a personal preference. And I think it's a smart way to incorporate having really talented people in your cast. Like, most people in the cast can really, really sing, so use them, you know? The first musical episode is Carrie. The Black Hood is terrorizing the town, and they put on a production of Carrie, and then Midge Mason, who's a side character, gets murdered during the production of Carrie. Horrific. Then we have Heathers, which is the most iconic one. The cult hijacks the high school musical and uses it to basically get teens to join their cult. But there's some fun ones. Cheryl sings Candy Store. Tony sings Dead Girl Walking. It's a fun one. Veronica's parents get divorced, so she sings Lifeboat. It's a fun musical episode. I think it's good. My favorite moment of this, though, is that Jughead is not in the musical, but then for some reason joins in on the last number, and I like to imagine in universe he somehow learns the choreography for the school musical in 12 minutes. I love it. Next, they do Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I don't like this one because I do love Hedwig as a musical. I think it's like a very subversive, interesting queer musical. Then they just have like straight characters singing the songs as love songs, like out of context. And it's just such a waste. I do give extra bonus points to this episode because the costume department was on one. They were killing it. And they do Next to Normal. Basically, Betty's mom is upset because Polly, her other daughter, is murdered. And she enters this like state of psychosis where she thinks she's in like a perfect 1950s family, even though her husband is like a murderer and her daughter was murdered and stuff like that. And they sing Next to Normal songs. I don't like this one. It's a bummer. Musical episodes are usually like a fun time, and this is just like not fun. I just hate it. I just think it's not good. I don't like it. The next one is American Psycho, which Roberto wrote the book for the West End production. So I'd assume it's the same. So he wrote the book for this musical and was like, what if we do it? I like this one because it's true Kevin chaos in that Betty is basically creating a serial killer convention, like a true crime convention, to lure the trash bag killer out of hiding as like a sting operation so they can catch him. And she's like, Kevin, would you perform a song at the convention for serial killers where we know we're asking the trash bag killer to come so I can trap him, this man that kept me in a hole for months? And this man suffocates people with trash bags as well. And Kevin performs a song from American Psycho, and part of the choreography is somebody starts to strangle him with a trash bag. And Betty, traumatized because she was kept in a hole for like a month, jumps on stage and like attacks the guy. And Kevin's like, no, that's part of the show. Why are you ruining the scene? You're ruining my musical number. And it's like, Kevin, have a little compassion. She was kept in a hole. Read the room. And then finally, the last season, we have Archie the Musical. It's an original musical. Bitch, when this episode came on, I was with my sister, and it's an original musical. I screamed. This is everything to me. Top 5 episode of the show. Makes absolutely no sense. Is it well written? No, that's not part of it. It's an original musical. It's amazing. So Kevin and Clay is Kevin's boyfriend in the 50s. You know, he perfectly captured what it's like to be in an interracial queer relationship in the 1950s. Write a musical about their friends' lives, like about senior year of high school. And they want everyone to like audition and be in it. This is actually like songs I believe that were written for an Archie musical that never got made. There's one song that is such a f***ing bop, I can't even explain it. It's written by Joe Iconis, who did the Be More Chill musical, which I like fine enough. It's not like my favorite, but this song rocks, and it's called, I don't know if it's called All American Mind, but it's basically Archie making up his All American Mind. This song is gonna be on my Wrapped, because when I was researching this video, I was like, this song is so good. Archie turning left, Archie turning right. I think it's good. Like, I do think it's actually like a fun idea. The idea being like, I can't make up my all-American mind because I'm an all-American boy. It's awesome. The other part that I like about this is Julian, Cheryl's brother in the 1950s, is the understudy for Archie in this musical about Archie. So imagine your friends are writing a musical about you and you're the main character, but you get an understudy that's someone else. They're practicing this song, and the actor who plays Julian is like a musical theater actor and incredibly talented. He's got like a amazing voice. And they're singing this song and he's just eating him up. Like, it sucks. It's like Archie is supposed to be playing himself singing and Julian is like opting up an octave and like doing crazy notes and just singing the song so much better than him.
Me, I don't have a clue of what I'm gonna do or even what my story is about. And if Archie going left, Archie going right, Archie running any road that he can find. Archie never making up his all-American mind. Making up his all-American.
Stop! Hell, man, we were humming.
And to imagine like playing yourself and having your understudy eat you up in this way is humiliating. It is my favorite scene of the whole show. If you take one thing from this video, you need to watch Archie making up his all-American mind. There's a version on YouTube sung by Andrew Barth Feldman if you don't want to watch the scene from the show, which is also good. It's great. Okay, next section, the credits music. This is a quick section. I just want you to know that at the end of every single episode, regardless of what's happening in the episode, they play this iMovie ass credit music that's like no matter what. You'd think they would change it when the show became big. They don't. It's awful. But I love it. It never changes. Okay, next section. This is just going to be the most insane plot points of the show. An honorable mention, if you will. Mentioned it a bit before. The devil comes to Riverdale. The devil's name is Lou Cypher, and he comes to Riverdale and basically gives everyone like a monkey's paw. Like not a real monkey's paw, but like the story monkey's paw, where he's like, I'll give you an interview, Jughead, for your paper. An interview with the devil. But then you'll never write again. That kind of thing. And he also, there's like a plot point where he's like, if you can't return your unreturned library books, you're gonna, I don't know, whatever. Obviously, god tier plot point on the show is going back to the 1950s to avoid Halley's Comet. No notes there. Perfect scene. Perfect plot point. There's a period where Kevin makes tickling videos online. People tickle each other for profit. And his teacher, like the principal of the school, is like, hey, you can't make tickling videos in your school football uniform. That's not allowed. You can't just do that. You can't do. Also, your children making erotic tickling videos. And they're like, can you believe the principal won't let us tickle? Obviously, the child fight ring in the prison when Archie's in prison and all the children have to fight to the death in the pool. Insane. When Archie breaks out of jail, a bear attacks him and Archie has to fist fight a bear and wins. And they reference it every once in a while where he's like, I fought a bear. Wild. There's also a period in which Jughead has a buried memory that he unlocks where he got so drunk on his book launch that he calls Betty and calls her a bitch. And then he falls into the sewer, gets covered in rats and has like a brain break and is like, I'm the Rat King. I'm the King of the Rats. What? The Mothman storyline where they think the Mothmen are like aliens have come to Riverdale, but in actuality it's Nana Rose's husband's illegitimate children who have been doing incest in the woods. Gotta be a top 10 plot point moment when Tabitha goes back in time and tries to stop the assassination of Martin Luther King. In this episode, she calls J. Edgar Hoover on the phone and is like, I know a lot of fishy stuff is going on in your files, okay? You know how you can just call, why don't you just call Taylor up? Why don't you just call J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI up? Why don't you call him up? She also then has to find a talesman to get back to the modern day. So she finds the Holy Grail and drinks a milkshake out of the Holy Grail. I'm not joking. There's Julian the haunted doll. So before Julian is alive in the 1950s, there's like a haunted doll in Cheryl's house that's possessed by the spirit of Julian. And Cheryl's like, I gotta fix this haunted doll. It turns out that it's her mother hiding in the walls and moving the doll. That's just the plot of the movie Boy. I know you the Riverdale writers thought that nobody saw the movie Boy. I saw the movie The Boy, in which a haunted doll is actually being moved by somebody in the walls. I'll never forget that. It scared me out of my goddamn mind. I know you thought that nobody saw The Boy, but I saw The Boy. I rented it on Redbox. Checkmate. We have obviously the trash bag killer keeping Betty in a hole. That's insane. Like, Betty's in the trenches. Archie's like, should I play music or should I become a boxer? And Betty is kept in a hole by a serial killer. The secret history plot point is iconic just because it's a teen show making reference to a classic book written by Donna Tartt. No notes. Amazing. The serial killer gene is another one where they establish that Betty has the serial killer gene and her dad has the serial killer gene and her mom has the serial killer gene, and her half-brother with Jughead has the serial killer gene. If I never have to hear about the serial killer gene again, it will be too soon. Then we have when Cheryl exhumes her dead brother Jason's corpse and just hangs out with it. And her girlfriend Tony's like, hey, stop fucking doing that. That's disgusting. And she's like, what? You think this is weird? Okay. We also have when everyone randomly got superpowers and then those went away. When Cheryl becomes a witch and a prophet and she makes a coven with Sabrina Spellman, and then they make all the other girls witches for a bit because Percival Pickens and the devil kill all the firstborns in Riverdale and they need to bring them back from the dead. Dark Betty, which is when Betty becomes a cam girl in like season 1 and she puts on a little black wig and like tries to drown a guy in a hot tub and she pours maple syrup in his like open eyes and mouth. And of course, when communism comes to Riverdale, the English teacher at Riverdale High gets fired for being a communist. And everyone's like, she's not a communist, don't worry. Communism is the word. She would never be a communist. So no notes there. Okay, next section, racism. We've got to talk about the racism on the show. I know you don't want my white bread ass talking about it. It's not my place to take up space in this world, but there is a lot of problems with it that I'll just highlight. And you can decide how you feel about them. But the show has been called out for its issues with racism. That's why primarily a lot of the actors that they add in later seasons are black actors or actors of color because the show was primarily white. And they had a real problem with giving their actors of color horrible storylines. The actress who played Tony posted about this during the pandemic, being like, every single fucking character on the show that's black is like a thug or like relegated to a role of best friend. And then somebody was like, well, Josie was written off the show because the actress was a diva. And she's like, I'm tired of black women being called divas. Like, what is your problem? They basically have a whole episode on the show where Josie comes back to town after being famous. And all of the characters have to be like, hey, sorry, we didn't include you in anything for no reason. And then you just left the show. Sorry. Because they have Josie as a love interest for Archie in like the first season. And then they just literally never use her again. They have no idea what to do with this character. It's really wild. And she like has a big want. It's one thing if it's a character that doesn't want anything, but she wants to be a famous singer. Like, just do that. So they create Tabitha, who is a black woman with her own going on as a character to try and rectify this. And they have Kevin and Clay in a relationship in the later seasons. Again, just like he's a black man who just like loves literature. Like he's like a writer boy, and they do also through Clay and Tony creating a literary society in their school. It's like a black literary society where they read black literature, but they talk about like Langston Hughes, the short story The Comic written by W.E.B. Du Bois, that kind of thing. So I think that is actually cool, especially for a show that loves to reference literature so much. Like, why not? In the very beginning of the season, they, like I mentioned before, use Emmett Till's death as like a catalyst for a lot of the black characters being fed up with racism and making changes to Riverdale. I am not the person who gets to say whether or not this is good. It doesn't feel good to use a real person. It feels strange to me to use Emmett Till's real name in like a show that's so silly most of the time. It's treated with respect, but it's just very tonally strange. But also when I was reading, I was trying to like read on people's thoughts of this episode, and people were like, well, I didn't know about Emmett Till and this educated me on it. So I don't know if it's good or not. It feels wild. I just feel like they should have made up something as opposed to using a real person, but they're bringing attention to it. I don't know. Let me know how you feel about that. Also in season 7, Reggie is like a farm boy, and the basketball team basically scouts him for the high school basketball team because they need like a ringer, like somebody who's really good at basketball, and Reggie's really good at basketball, and they're like, if you play on this team you can get a basketball scholarship, and that's his whole thing. And Charles Melton is a Korean actor, and they have Reggie be like canonically Korean, which is good because shows also have a big history of being like, this Korean actor is Chinese, the character is Chinese, and the actor is Korean, don't worry about it. So they have that. And a lot of his plot line when he moves to Riverdale is him dealing with racism, but it's strange because like they don't engage with like the model minority myth, which would make sense for like a plot line where he's literally being welcomed into this world because he is exceptional at basketball, and this idea that like immigrants from Asia in America have to be like exceptional. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. Or separating yourself from the diaspora. I know it's a lot to ask of Riverdale, but instead they just basically treat Reggie like he's black, if that makes sense. Like the racism he experiences is that is more in line with racism that black people would experience in the 50s. Also, this is post World War II, and in the 40s in America and Canada, they had Japanese internment camps where like people who were Japanese were literally not trusted even if they were like American citizens and have done truly nothing wrong, and were sent to internment camps. And although Reggie is Korean, not Japanese, they would also just send separate Asian people there as well. Also famously racism that a lot of Asian people experience in America is like, I can't tell the difference. Everybody looks the same, you know? So there's no talk of that. There's no engaging in World War II or that kind of anti-Asian racism that he might experience. Also, the Korean War happens in the 50s, and this is the 50s, and they don't talk about that either. So it feels like there was lots of openings to have more like the specific kinds of racism that Asian people would experience at this time period, but no. They put a bunch of rice in his locker, which is, I guess, kind of akin to that. But besides that, they're basically like, he's a thug. He shouldn't be here. We don't like him. And nobody wants to touch him or I don't want to be around him. And like the adults in town are like, well, as long as he plays basketball, he's not one of us, but he can play basketball or whatever. And then the students have to be like, don't be racist. But there's a scene where the basketball team doesn't want to play with him. And Archie's like, guys, you got to stop being racist. And the basketball team's like, we don't want to play with him. But there's like Black and Asian people already on the basketball team. Like, it's one thing if it's all white people, but they have like 4 Black people in the back. And they also have Fangs on the team. And that actor is biracial and part Chinese. And Dilton Doily is the team's water boy. And he's Korean. Also, just want to talk real quickly about the product placement in which constantly Hiram Lodge is eating Doritos or Archie's using his charm card to buy things. No notes on that. I think that's awesome. Now it's time to talk about the things that I hate in this show. Love this show. Think it's the best show ever. But there are some things about this show that I think are truly abysmal. Number 1 is gangs. I touched on this before. I hate the gangs. I hate them. Basically, this show has like big bad guys usually every season, and they use like gangs in the town as like their minions kind of, but they're not scary, they're indiscernible, and it's like not fun because if it's one bad guy, you get to know him and the actors really get to chew the scenery and create a character. But the gangs are not varied people. They don't get complex or interesting backstories. They barely get like anything to differentiate them one from the other. The show started out with the South Side Serpents. So when Jughead went to public school at the wrong side of the tracks, he had to like join the gang, and his dad is a serpent. And it used to be kind of being like, oh my God, this gang is bad. But then everybody joined the gang. So it's like, okay, if Archie's in the gang, then how bad can the gang really be? The Serpents would war with the Ghoulies. The Ghoulies are literally I hate the Ghoulies with a passion. They're really more just like indiscernible bad. They sell drugs like Jingle Jangle, and like that's really it. They do gang warfare and sell drugs and will just do Hiram Lodge's bidding for no reason. They also love to like kill gang members like on the show and be like, can you believe she's dead? And you're like, I don't care. I don't know these characters. It doesn't matter to me. It's like you introduce a guy named Jerry, hit him with a bus, and you're like, can you believe Jerry's dead? And you're like, well, yeah, I don't know. Eventually, they also have the Pretty Poisons when Cheryl and Tony start robbing people. They're part of the Serpents, and they start doing house burglary, and then they get kicked out, so they form a girls-only group called the Pretty Poisons. This seems like merchandising to me, like they wanted to create a girl leather jacket to sell at Hot Topic. Fine. Second, superpowers. I think this is stupid when they all got superpowers. After the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina got canceled, Roberto really wanted, I think, to put magic into the Riverdale universe. I think it destroys the stakes. You've fought so long to create and craft mysteries based in our real world that then when you introduce magic, it's just kind of like, well, then there's no stakes, there's no reality. I'm not going to solve a mystery if magic's a part of it, because like, I'm not going to be able to guess what magic it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna be able to guess that the devil is real. Why would I be able to guess? Why would I guess that? So I hate it. I also think the superpowers are stupid. I accept Cheryl as a witch. That is as far as I'll go, and I barely do that. I just think it's so lazy. It's not interesting. It doesn't add anything to the story. Then they take them back. They take away their superpowers anyway, so who cares? And it's like after Marvel was big, so I just don't even understand it. Next, we have Veronica's many businesses. To give Veronica anything to do, they're like, she loves business. So she's running a speakeasy, then she's running a bar. Now she's running a maple rum business, and now she's selling fancy little $1 million eggs, and I just don't care. I also never see it. They're just like asking you to accept that she's good at business. I don't think there's anything wrong with letting a girly girl be a girly girl. I think when she runs her movie theater in the last season, that's fine, because I think that's interesting. Her just like running a bar at 16, I'm like, okay, I hate this. Doesn't make any sense. It's not interesting. Lily Reinhart's extensions and costumes. I think Lily Reinhart is a beautiful woman, and I think they have her fighting for her life in this show. They give her extensions after the 7-year time jump, and it literally looks like somebody did them with a blindfold on. They're just like long streaks of hair. I'm like, you have the budget. Also, why does her hair have to be long? You don't have to have long hair to be 7 years older. And in the 50s, they dress her in just these horrible costumes. Like, she just never looks comfortable or good. And I'm like, why? She's conventionally attractive. Why? It's baffling. It's distracting. I have sensory issues. Obviously, I'm wearing the most billowing shirt imaginable. And they have so many tight shirts that are literally like cutting into her arms and neck, and it looks horrible. And I feel so bad for her. Shame. And finally, Archie and his many careers. Archie is, he's in a long line of main characters who are the worst parts of their show. They don't know what to do with Archie, so they just give him several careers and hope and pray to God that we care about them. Here's a list of his careers. They're all boring, by the way. He wants to be a musician, but plays football. He wants to be a vigilante because his dad got shot. He runs a boxing gym. He breaks out of prison and fights a bear, and it's still not interesting. He becomes a construction worker and also mines. He's a miner for palladium. He goes to war and has PTSD. He becomes a firefighter and a community leader. None of them are interesting at all. Like, if you think they sound interesting, you're wrong if you watch the show. I don't care. The Archie boxing storyline will literally be the death of me. It is the most boring stretch of television imaginable. And I watched the stretch of Gilmore Girls where Lorelai's building the inn, like I've seen some shit. They have one part in the final season where they just have him like cars and want to drive a car, and it's the most interesting thing they've given him in 5 seasons. He's just like, I like cars, and it works. Here are things that I actually liked. I liked the auteur storyline. Having somebody send creepy VHSs with creepy masks, very scary. I thought the art department was on their Oscar shit that season. It looked really scary. It looked really good. I wanted to know the mystery. Same with the trash bag killer. Thought he was genuinely terrifying. They unmask him and he's just a regular guy. And for that, I'll never forgive them. Like, you have a masked killer. Have him be a character we know. Jesus. Archie the musical. Favorite episode of the fucking show. Having Julian eat up Archie in the role of Archie is everything to me. The titular Archie. So good. Archie going left, Archie going right, Archie never making up his mind. Oh, so good. Tabitha as a character, I think, is a great addition. I think the genre and visual references in the show are very ambitious, and I have to give respect to them. They could have made the show look so ugly. Instead, they want to, like, reference Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks. I gotta give it up for them. And the final season, I thought them going back to the 50s was stupid in conception, but I actually really enjoyed it. I also think it's an interesting comment on people who are like, what happened to the show? Remember when they were just in high school? We kind of got that in the final season. I thought it was interesting. For the final section of this, I'm going to talk about missed opportunities, things I think they should have done in the show. A Sprouse twin plotline. We never once see Dylan. We never once get like, oh my God, there's twins. You're telling me you can't do a twin? Jughead has an evil doppelganger. Jughead has an evil twin. There's literally a plot point where there's 2 Jugheads because one's from an alternate reality and they're both played by Cole Sprouse. Why can't we get Dylan on the call sheet? I think that that's a missed opportunity. Next is giving Josie an actual plot line. Like I said before, she wants to be a star. Like, she wants to be a famous pop star. It feels like we could have really dug into that. There's, oh my God, there's a big record producer in town. I don't know. That would be interesting. And she's a great singer, so I want more of her. Next one is making one of the main characters evil. I'd preface this by also saying I want it to be evil Jughead or evil Betty, and not like fake evil, like, oh my God, she's this nightmare from next door. I want one of them to be like brainwashed or like just turn evil and work for Hiram. I think that would be interesting. But it never really happens. Also, shoot Hiram dead on screen. They have a scene where Hiram gets shot off screen because Veronica calls a hit out on her dad. And I get that they didn't kill him on screen because I think they wanted to leave the door open for Mark Consuelos to come back. I think he asked to leave and they're like, yeah, we'll let you leave. We'll kill you. But like, you can come back if you want. But because he's not dead on screen, you're like, well, he's surely alive. Like, anytime somebody's like, he died, and you're like, well, we didn't see the body. On a teen show where people come back from the dead like that, I think he might be alive. So just kill him on screen and then bring him back if he wants to come back. It's fine. I have a dollhouse. Just do the Pretty Little Liars dollhouse. Have them all trapped underground in a bunker and be tortured by like an A. I would like that. And finally, Reggie versus Reggie. They have a part in the alternate universe plotline where they bring back the first actor who played Reggie, and him and Charles Melton duel and kill each other. I think it would be funnier to bring him back from the alternate universe, and then you just have two different Reggies played by two different actors. I think that would be really funny. That is everything I have to say about Riverdale. Thank you for watching. This video literally killed me. My back is aching. Thank you. If you watched all the videos, thank you. If you just watched this one, thank you. I had a blast and a half talking about this show. I love this show, and it makes me so happy that like people care. So thank you. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care of yourself. Bye.